We finally made that historic vote to impeach Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. This was the second vote on the articles of impeachment after last week's unsuccessful vote. Hey everybody, I hope that you're having a great weekend. I'm here with an update, as always, to tell you what's happened in Washington, D.C., also what's happening in Florida this week, from Army Corps of Engineers' decision to discharge water from Lake Okeechobee, to finally impeaching Secretary Mayorkas, to the baffling response that I got when I asked a Biden official about their plan on creating a Palestinian state. The theme this week is some absolutely baffling and enraging choices made by the federal bureaucrats that I have to deal with here in Washington, but it's not all bad news, so please stick around until the end for a positive update on our work to recognize and serve America's veterans, my brothers and sisters in arms. So let's get started on all of it. First of all, the United States Army Corps of Engineers announced this week discharges from Lake Okeechobee to our St. Lucie estuary will begin today. I hate discharges. You all know that. I've been fighting against it since day one, since the day I got into Congress. I've been fighting to end these, not allow them to happen, do whatever we can to stop them. You name it, we don't need it in our estuary. We need to send that water from Lake Okeechobee south where it belongs. Now, thanks to the provisions that I added in the 2018 Water Resources Development Act, or we call it WRDA, it's the manual for how they manage Lake Okeechobee. It's known as LOSUM today. That's the new manual. The Corps of Engineers was about to implement it last year. Federal bureaucrats, they paused the progress in implementing the new manual for Lake Okeechobee. The agency that did that was known as National Marine Fisheries. Fast forward, because of that old ineffective system and a complete mismanagement of Lake Okeechobee water levels, Army Corps of Engineers announced it's discharging up to 1,800 cubic feet per second of water. This is an enormous amount, and that shouldn't be happening. It's not good for our estuary. And just to say a little bit about how you should be looking at this from a standpoint of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, they see discharges right now as the lesser of two evils, the lesser of two evil situations. The Corps knows that Lake Okeechobee water is dirty. It's filled with phosphorus, nitrogen. It is dirty water. But they also know that if they wait and discharge the water in a couple months, the Army Corps of Engineers knows that that dirty water will actually be toxic water, because all of those nutrients, when they heat up, because it gets to the late spring, early summer, will turn into microcystin algae. EPA said if you're a human being, don't come in contact with that over 8 parts per billion. We've seen numbers higher than 800 parts per billion in the early springtime as that water heats up with all of those nutrients in the water. So let's make an analogy for this. The analogy that I would make about how the Corps of Engineers looking at these lesser of two evils, I don't want any of these evils, but this is how they're looking at it. Imagine I drink a lot of milk. I love whole milk. My kids love it. So if we left milk sitting out on the table over the weekend and it went bad, you wouldn't want that. That's kind of what Lake Okeechobee is right now. This time of year, it's a little bit of bad milk. But that's entirely different than if you let that milk sit outside in the sun for an entire month, and now it's curdled and it's everything that you could imagine a gallon of milk would be if it was sitting outside for a month in the Florida sun. It's more like that. They're both not what you want, but one of them is absolutely disgusting and one of them is just moderately disgusting. That's kind of what the Corps of Engineers is dealing with right now, that milk analogy. And so I will acknowledge it is a lesser of two evils, but we shouldn't have to deal with either of these evils at all. As your representative, I'm going to continue to fight for clean water in our estuaries. Freshwater discharges, disgusting freshwater, but freshwater discharges into our saltwater estuaries, it's like a wildfire that goes through the forest but underneath the water. It's like a wildfire to the seagrass underneath the water. It wipes out acres and acres of seagrass, which is where the forage fish are, the seagrass for the manatee, where that ecosystem thrives and grows, wipes it out because it doesn't belong there. I'm going to keep you updated on that front as this continues on. Switching gears here. Washington, D.C., we finally made that historic vote to impeach Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. This was the second vote on the articles of impeachment after last week's unsuccessful vote to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. Now, time after time, I have been vocal about this, so let the numbers bear out. Since President Biden took office, millions of migrants have and continue to sneak into our communities. Tens of thousands of pounds of fentanyl have come across our border. In fact, more than 1.7 million illegal immigrants have crossed the border without being apprehended by Border Patrol officers. This is what happens when you reverse President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy that was working. When you reverse that, you get what's taking place right here. When you stop the construction of the southern border wall, you get what's taking place right here. Their personal vendettas against President Trump are putting America at risk, and it's been doing it since the day Biden came into office. So just as I did last week, I was looking forward to voting to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. Unfortunately, due to a 10-hour-plus flight delay, I was stuck in the airport. Had I been president in Washington, D.C., I would have voted the way that I did before, which was to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. I'd take that vote every day of the week. This guy should have been gone long ago. He has failed this country. His job is to secure the border, and I'm glad to see that the House finally voted to impeach him. I want to switch gears one more time. House Foreign Affairs Committee. I questioned one of the Biden's State Department officials, and this was the questions that are asked. Are you assessing situations in Israel with an objective lens and with no bias? That's what I was asking the individual. Are you looking at what you're saying should take place objectively? Now, this is not just any Biden official. Her job is being the Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security. This means she's in charge of transporting weapons to help our allies and prevent them from falling into the hands of our enemies. So it's a pretty serious position. There's no doubt that this is a pretty important role. Now let's take a look at my exchange with her. You're here representing support for a Palestinian state, correct?
Yes, yes.
Who would you assess would lead that Palestinian state? You could name a group, but I'm saying Hamas, Palestinian Authority, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Fatah, some other group. Who would lead it?
I think that has to be something that's considered, but I think I would have to have a little. I don't feel comfortable saying that without.
Have you not assessed what group would lead it? Have you or have you not assessed who would become the leader of that Palestinian state?
This is part of a larger discussion.
But have you or have you not assessed that? Don't even say who it is. Just answer, have you assessed it? Have you assessed who would lead it?
Put it this way, there will be an assessment of this question within the U.S. government in terms of who we think should.
Here supporting something you have not assessed.
I'm not in a position right now to say what that is because I think this is part of a larger discussion.
Honestly, it's amazing. So number one, she admitted that the Biden administration makes no objective assessment before they announce policy. She has not looked objectively at the idea of making a country, a state out of Palestinians. In fact, she says it will take place in the future. Number two, she's representing the government, the Biden administration, and yet she can't even answer the simplest questions like, did you assess before you announced a policy? Did you objectively look at something? She just couldn't even answer if she looked at something objectively. From the failed Afghanistan withdrawal to this, the theme of the Biden administration is no strategy. I'm going to continue to call out the Biden administration for putting Americans at risk by implementing foolish decisions that are backed by no objective, no assessment, no logic. Last, not least, I introduced a bill this week to honor a lifelong veterans' rights advocate, Thomas Corey. For those of you who don't know Thomas Corey, he was drafted into the United States Army in 1966, was deployed to Vietnam where he served as a 1st Cavalry Division squad leader during the Tet Offensive. Unfortunately, he was shot in the neck and he was permanently paralyzed. However, he did not let that define him. He overcame his injuries, got involved in the local and the regional and the national veterans organizations, including his service as a founding president of the West Palm Beach chapter 25 of the Vietnam Veterans of America, the VVA, later renamed the Thomas H. Corey chapter 25 in his honor, and ultimately as the national president of the Vietnam Veterans of America. pretty important work. He's shown the world that no injury was big enough to eclipse his mission to serve others. I love it. And that's why I led an entire Florida delegation to honor his legacy by renaming the West Palm Beach VA Medical Center in his name. This is a recognition that I think he deserves for his tireless work to locate the remains of his brothers in arms left behind in the jungles of Vietnam and the rice paddies of Vietnam, his passionate advocacy for our veterans, our community. There's no better individual that our West Palm Beach VA could be named after from our area. He did incredible work. I'm inspired by men like him, and I'm always honored when I have an opportunity to meet men and women like him, to talk about their stories and what they did on the battlefield. And in that, I just want to say that it's an honor to serve you. I hope that you're all having a great weekend, and I will see you all around. You all take care. Hey everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, please click like and subscribe. I will be back on YouTube with more exclusive content, so stay tuned.